"Good morning, my love," Ashton said, bringing coffee over to my side of the bed. Wearing nothing but a small t-shirt, she sat next to me and talked to me as I woke up. "I'm feeling better today, I want to go do something," she said with a playful smile. "What sparked this talk?" I asked, taking a sip of coffee. I had had a really good dream, about us moving into a crazy big home in North Oak. Jake, Kendall, Taylor, and Ed all lived in the rooms next door. Ed and Taylor were a happy couple living together in the rooms down the hall. "We were all thriving, my love, we had a beautiful view with plenty of money," she said, full of excitement. Her face lit up when she talked about her dreams. It made me so happy to hear her passion. "What were the people like?" I asked, lighting a cigarette. "There were not many, it was pleasant having the streets empty, but the people, my love, were all very friendly, everyone kind of just did their own thing. There was barely any power, no running water. It was the same as here, just weathered and a little shittier," she said before taking a drag of her grit. "In a way, that sounds kind of nice. A place as simple, as quiet," I said while buttoning up my jacket. "I'm sure such a place exists, my love, we just have to find it," she replied softly before kissing me. We agreed to spend some time in North Oak before going to Blanca's house. The goal was to get there by 9 p.m. We got on the couch with a large blanket covering the two of us. Grim lay at our feet and in front of the warm fireplace. We drank our wine while we watched TV. For hours the snow began getting heavier and falling harder. The wind began howling, the sky grew darker as the clouds got thicker. I spoke with my grandfather on the phone for a little bit. He was having a good time with my grandmother and said they will be home a few days after the new year. Around 2 p.m., we jumped in the shower, then got ready to leave. We fed Grim in the kitchen and locked up before leaving the house. Ashton climbed into the truck as I shoveled the snow from the driveway. I made sure my chains were tight before climbing into the cab. The snow was falling a lot lighter than before. The streets looked almost foggy with pretty bad visibility. The sky would light up every couple of minutes from the lightning over the hill. We put a tape in the player and drove slowly through the mountain. The snow began to get deeper and was starting to get more difficult to drive through, so Ashton and I pulled off at a chain station and waited for the next snowplow to clear the way. We sat in the warm cab and enjoyed the weather. We lit our cigarettes and rolled the windows down enough to let the smoke out. We were under one of 12 large dim road lights that lit up the chain station. I got out of the truck to scrape some of the ice that was still frozen to our windshield. The night is cold. The visibility was only getting worse. I chipped the rest of the ice off the back window before getting back into the warm truck. We scanned through the radio until we reached the Jerry Show. We sat and listened to him ramble until we could see the headlights from a snowplow down the road. Once he passed the chain station, we pulled back onto Jericho and got behind the small row of cars that were also trailing the plow. We drove slowly through the range until we reached our turn towards North Oak. After eventually passing Camp Vernick, we found our way through the low cloud and into the center of North Oak. We stopped at the Diamond Cafe first and said hello to Jennifer. After about half an hour we left and began walking down the street to the bookstore. We approached our first street light when we began the sound of a saxophone. A familiar tune could be heard. It was faint and was playing the same melody from the last time we came into town. We looked at each other and couldn't help but to smile after a moment of uncertainty. There were not many cars on the road tonight. The ones we did see were having tremendous trouble stirring in the snow. Quite a few cars were stuck. We walked by a payphone that was behind one of the covered bus stops. It rang the moment we passed by it. Ashton squeezed my hand and quickly shut down the idea of me answering it. We turned the corner and decided to stop inside a thrift shop to get Ashton a new scarf. I figured I would get one too. The thermometer inside the store said it was -3 degrees. The clerk said it would drop to -13 degrees later tonight. The clerk at the thrift store had made hot chocolate before we got there and offered us cups while we took our time looking through clothes. She had incense burning and had a slow-tempo folk record on the player. I bought Hasten new pants, 2 new coats, a black dress and a pair of aviator sunglasses. She bought me new boots, a new hoodie and a first snow beanie. I am the type of person that feels the need to put on the clothes that I just got, so I went to the changing room again to put them on while Hasten talked with the clerk. When I walked back over, she poured us new cups of hot chocolate and reminded us to leave our faucets running when we get home later so the water won't freeze in the pipes. We grabbed our bags and made our way back into the heavy snowfall. We walked a few blocks down the main avenue when we began to hear music once again, this time coming from a violin. It was the same melody as before, it was the same melody as before, it was the same melody as before, it was the same melody as before. The streets were too foggy to see who was playing the song. We went inside the bookstore and spent a good hour looking through the books. We got a few horror novels, a romance for Hasten, and a murder mystery for me. Hasten also bought a new notebook and a new pen. When we left, we walked a few blocks down 7th Street and crossed at Summit Avenue. Locals were walking out of stores, holding their coffees and their gift bags. It was nice to see everyone smiling tonight. The joy of the holidays radiated through pretty much everyone. The businesses had their lights up, most were shopping for presents, others were on dates. It was a good day to be out. We had dinner at an Italian restaurant called Uncle Tito's. The food was good, the ambience was perfect. A piano played in the room beside us in the main section of the restaurant. I got seafood with penne, Hasten got fettuccine alfredo. Hasten took the host aside while on her way back from the bathroom. She had paid her $20 to grab us a bottle of red wine. "Merry Christmas," she said, bringing her glass to mine for the rims to hit. "Too many more, my love," I said before taking a swig from the glass. "We are full of smiles and laughter tonight, and Hasten looks so good." Hasten was explaining to me how wine is made when she paused in the middle of her sentence. She looked at me with an almost concerned face, then looked around the room. "What is it, dear?" I asked before finishing my glass. "Do you hear that? Babe, just listen for it," she said as she poured new glasses for both of us. Over the chatter, I began to realize that the melody the piano was playing was the same as the one from outside. The same one from a few days ago. The same melody as before, the same melody as before. The same melody as before. Hasten showed me the goosebumps on her arm. I felt chills run up my spine. I did my best to keep us distracted from the piano, but it seemed to have taken our attention. We finished up and walked into the cold. The sun was going down and the night was growing even darker. The lamplighters began igniting the flame wick lamps that ran down the streets. We walked back to the truck and continued through the town and towards Blanca's house. "Do you think we should go back to Willow Creek after Blanca specifically told us not to?" Hasten said as she lit our cigarettes. "I don't know, I feel different about it now. I don't know if I want to go anymore, I responded. We can decide after tonight, okay my love, Hasten said, placing her hand delicately on my leg. We took our time getting to Blanca's house. This part of the mountain gets pretty dark around this time. One of the only light sources is the two dim lights that come from Jerry's radio building. One that hovers over the small lot out front and the other coming from the room above where Jerry works out of. We pulled up into the small parking lot next to the building. We could see Jerry at his chair next to his microphone. He had his headphones on and wore large bifocals with a white button-up shirt and tie. We turned the radio to his talk station and listened to him while we watched him at his desk. He was talking with a caller once again about the disappearances throughout the last couple of weeks. He said his sister has been missing for a week now and he is worried about her. Jerry continued to go back and forth about conspiracy theories and opinions on what could have happened. It was entertaining to listen to him, but we had to get going. We agreed to listen to Jerry on the way back home. We were met by Blanca on her porch once again waiting for our arrival. After our greetings, we made our way into her living room. We talked for a little bit about the others before we asked any questions. You still carry heavy shoulders, my friend, Blanca said, looking over at me. I don't know what it is, it won't really go away, I responded, lighting a cigarette. Well, a lot is going on, my Tanya. You should give your mind a break. There are lots of things beginning to add up, is there not? That is why I invited you into my home on this night. It is the eve of what you call Christmas and I'm sure there are other places you could be, so I thank you both for coming, Blanca said before pouring more wine. No problem really, we enjoy your company, Ms. Z. I think one of the reasons I'm feeling weathered is because of the things we have not told you and the things we have not told our friends. I have no answers for the occurrences, and the more I try to find answers, the further the rabbit hole gets. I said before taking a swig of the horrible wine. This is the right place as well as the right night to speak on this, wherever you are willing to start, my Tanya. Blanca said while uncorking another bottle. So it started with Mrs. Brixton. Since I came back to school my junior year, she has been calling me in the office more times than I can count, sometimes 3 times a week. The last time I saw her she told me to write. This is the reason I started writing this story in the first place. Hasten and I found her body that night she died. She had pulled off the headrest so when the airbag deployed she would die on impact. Since then, we have gone to Willow Creek and experienced that. Jacob, or Mrs. Brixton's son, had found me. Shortly after we found that something is still following him. We also went back to the address. It was there where we found the shack that Mr. Brixton had built in the backyard. When we went to the shack we saw that Mr. Brixton, or Jacob's father, had drugged and molested dozens of children. I took a deep breath and took another swig of wine. Hasten sat forward and started. When it's said aloud it seems to sink in a little deeper, but yes, this is why we are feeling more weathered than usual. We can't find answers, she said before bringing the veil to her red lips. I understand, my friends, Blanca said. I can give you what I know and a worthy opinion if you are open to this. So I want to start with Mr. Brixton, Tanya. He was a horrible man. Abducting children, molestation, pedophilia, and abuse is all that man really had to his name. You're right, his horrid acts attracted the attention of the below. I do not know how or when it happened, but Mr. Brixton made an offering before he became a father. What I know is that Mr. Brixton would be clean of guilt if he willingly relinquished his future and spirit to the below. This means that Mr. Brixton could not take his own life. That was part of the offering to the first great king. It is clear that his acts only got worse and more frequent after he became a father. His sick desires were never laid to rest and he seemed to have forgotten about his offering, but the king did not forget. After Mr. Brixton's guilt became too much to handle, he killed himself. The debt indeed went unpaid. The first great king then found Jacob. Jacob endured horrific situations and traumatic abuse while at Willow Creek. The first great king damned the bishop to the below sometime while at Willow Creek. Jacob also took his life, therefore, leaving the debt unpaid. You were right about these things. Please give your thoughts a rest, Blanca said with a small grin. Hasten took out her new notebook and began writing notes. When it comes to the wicked, what is relevant to us? She said as she took a sip of wine. The dates and the names, my dear. You must know of the dates and the names. As far as the dates, we have discussed this already, but I'm sure you may have forgotten. What is relevant right now is winter. It is no just one day but in fact 3. The 21st of December is a big one. This is the time the ones who worship the sun give and receive offerings from the below. It is a time where sacrifices and rituals are the most prevalent. This is obviously an attempt from the living to be on their believed God's good side. The next day is Christmas itself. The 25th of December is the day of celebration of everything wicked as well as anything unholy. This is also a day where deals made with the below come to their conclusion. The 25th of December is the day the most spirits are collected and brought to their place in the below. It is there where countless ceremonies, festivals, and gatherings are held until the turn of the new year. January 1st is the last of the dates. This is the day of rebirth and collection for the upcoming 6 months. This is the day where debts are clear, the followers of the sun receive their graces and the cattle that are left are guaranteed to survive the winter. Blanca said while offering to refill our glasses. I will admit that we were inside of Willow Creek on December 21st and we did see a large group of females in gowns. They were dancing in a circle while holding hands. The whole thing was quite odd. There was a dead frog, a dead cat, and a mound of what looked like meat in the center of their dancing circles, Hasten stated. Blanca grabbed a book from the shelf behind her and skimmed through it for a moment before handing it over to Hasten. The pages were open to a drawing of women holding hands dancing around a pit of fire. The women in the gowns are most likely followers of the sun and therefore followers of the first great king by default. Those women are responsible for the hanging elk you were telling me about. They are the ones able to give such warnings, and from the looks of it, this is how the followers of the first great king communicate. Unapologetic and blatant signs of disturbance and warnings. The great king is far more intelligent than anyone or anything you could imagine. He is relentless and unmerciful. His followers and the ones that worship him are one and the same, she explained. I took a drag of my cigarette then leaned forward in my chair. Where are the followers from? I asked. They are descendants of the villagers that arrived on this land after the Kilpoko. For generations, they have been living in small communities within the forest. They remain untouched by choice and need to be understood, just like the descendants of the Kilpoko do. It is their worship, it is their way of life. They must be left uninterrupted. Now if you hear what I'm saying, you will understand I am telling you not to visit Willow Creek on those dates. The below does not always need a reason to take you with them. Sometimes they will for their own entertainment, she said before lighting her next cigarette. Anything we should look out for, Ms. Z, anything that should cause us concern, Hasten stated before taking another sip of wine. If you're asking about the great king, you should know you have already met him, you have already been in his presence on numerous occasions. You have seen him before you met me and you have heard the words spoken, which is more than I can say for most, she said. I leaned back in my chair. There was a man inside of Willow Creek. He knew my name, I think his name was Jim, I said calmly. Yes, Jim. Jim is one of the dozens of names the great king will use. I suggest you avoid any man by the name of Jim. Blanca chuckled a little to herself. Now I'm not saying to walk around paranoid of certain names, but you must pay attention to a few. Besides Yang, Andy, Tan and Leonard, you should also know about Zogan. Zogan is someone we have not discussed but might have more of an influence on you than you think. I did not want to talk about Zogan, but it would be a disservice not to at least address other relevance to your story. Zogan was the very first entity that the Kilpoko called upon. Zogan is responsible for influencing the medicine man and for calling upon the others from the below. Zogan is personal to me due to the fact that the medicine man is my ancestor and has accompanied my bloodline for centuries. Zogan is one of a few presidents of the below that roam the Northridge Mountains. Now, the great king is ruthless and unapologetic with horrid intentions, while Zogan is more inclined to alchemy and the wicked. To some he is a president, while to his followers he is also known as a king. He has a lot to do with the story of the Philophyser stone and appears many times in pagan as well as Wicca practices. He can mislead and trick the wisest of men. He can also gift the luxury of great knowledge to those deserving. He can turn any liquid into money. He can turn water into wine, blood into wine, oil into wine. He can turn metals into gold and can influence or control any living creature he is in the company of. He is truly unholy at his core and the master of trickery and deception. He can influence entire bloodlines of the living. He can appear as whatever living creature he wishes, including humans. When infernal, he takes the body of a large man with black skin and a bull's head. He stands 10 feet tall and is known to hover over the ground as if he is floating. He has the wings of a large griffin with black feathers. He wears a large black cloak and carries a staff that is a lot like Leonard's. He wears lots of gold and has long sharp horns. He is accompanied by 2 large mountain rams that are also black in color. He is modest and subtle but can cause great chaos if given the reason to do so. You might never know when he is in your presence. He could be here right in front of you and you would not know, she said unwillingly to break eye contact with me. Hasten lit us cigarettes as Blanca grabbed her tobacco pipe from the drawer next to the fireplace. I poured myself another glass and grabbed one of the photos from the pile in my backpack. It was the picture of Jacob and Mrs. Brigstone in front of the institution. Almost every night since Mrs. Brigstone died, I have been restless. I will lay awake in bed after Hasten falls asleep and fall deep into thought. He'll eventually get up and have a grit by the window. I always circle back to Willow Creek. I start to feel upset and I get angry with how those children were treated. I will never be able to wrap my mind around how truly fucked up people are to that population of adults and children. Treated like monsters, like animals and like unworthy piles of flesh. I get upset when I think about it, Mrs. Z, and to think that Jacob is one of the thousands that have a similar experience in that institution. The way he was abandoned there, the way he was treated, the way he was molested and discarded. When we went to the address, we went inside. We went through Jacob's old room as well as Mrs. Brigstone's papers and files. Jacob had no mental disability nor was handicapped in any way, shape or form. Jacob was admitted to Willow Creek and there was nothing wrong with him at all. It is one thing to be on the wards of the institution while being mentally disabled. There is a barrier to understanding certain occurrences and situations. Jacob had nothing in the way of having him fully interpreting and experiencing the horror that happened there. Constantly surrounded by the other students doesn't belong there can be further traumatizing to cognitive children. You can imagine what he saw, what he witnessed, and he had nobody to confide in. He was scared, he was alone, so miserable, and I don't blame him for taking his life. It is upsetting that he is one out of so many that endured such torment. I hope every child can just rest easy and is not troubled wherever they reside now, I said before taking another drag of my cigarette. Blanca looked at the two of us with a small grin. The way that you both of you feel is the way that I wish the rest of humans felt about such terror. What those children endured was easily one of the worst things that could possibly happen to a person, and the ones that involved themselves in such acts should suffer endlessly. The way you feel about this is the same way that the below feels about this. The above will not accept any children from Willow Creek because they look at them as impure given their conditions and diseases. It is also obvious that the children should not be left to roam with the dead. The below has brought them into the Landadovnul one by one after their death. It is there where the children of Willow Creek are left untouched. Landadovnul is not a place to suffer infernally. They are okay now and are no longer suffering, Blanca said calmly. She then lit her tobacco pipe and put another log in the fire before sitting back down. We all filled our glasses. I lit another cigarette. Blanca looked up at the clock that back over to us. She then leaned forward in her chair. Now I need the two of you to listen. Like I said before, you have no business going back to Willow Creek this winter. If you take what I've told you and put that with everything you are not telling me, you will see that there is something much bigger and more intricate going on. Take this time away to think of it, and do not make the decision to go back to the institution until you get a grip on what that means for you. It is the eve of Christmas. Tonight and tomorrow are days you should avoid any contact with anything unholy or wicked. You two are not the only ones going through this, you know. Ed, Jake, and Kendall have all had separate experiences of their own and they feel the same way you do. Ed came over a few days ago to talk about losing his mother and how he watched her die that night. Jake and Kendall came by my home late a few nights back as well. Jake brought up his impulsive anger and Kendall talked about the night at the theater. What I am trying to say is you all are stressed out and guilty of things that you cannot control. You all need to rest and calm yourselves. You all need to give yourselves a break. You are all young and full of curiosities and the need for answers. I will always be puzzled by how relentless you kids can be. I know the more we talk about the institution the more you all want to go inside, and I do not blame you. I just ask that with this information, you think twice before bringing your friends as well as yourselves to a point where you can no longer turn back. There is a whole world out there that you know nothing about. Maybe it is best you leave it untouched until it is time to do so, she said before standing up in her chair. She hugged us both before saying how we just need to breathe. She was doing well at keeping us somewhat positive about it all. It felt relieving, like much needed therapy. I hate to end this night so short. I thought we would have more time, but I have to be somewhere soon. I wish to have the two of you over soon after this is all over. You will see me soon, but I'm sure it will not be here at my home until after the new year," she said, walking us out the door. "What do you mean?" Hasten asked. "I have a surprise for you all. You will see soon, my Tanya," she replied with a smile. We walked through the heavy snow and wind until we got to the truck. We sat parked in the cab until we warmed up enough to drive. We made it down the driveway and turned right down the lonely mountain road. Hasten turned the radio station to Jerry's talk show. He was talking about all the conspiracy theories around Christmas and how unhealthy it is for the youth. We pulled into the lot by the radio building and hung out for a while. Watching him talk was pretty entertaining. He was so animated when he spoke. Hasten and I seemed to be in good spirits. Blanca was right, we should not be stressing over things we cannot control. The wind was howling, the snow was pelting the top of the truck. The night was dark. Nothing but the glow from the road lamps occasionally illuminating the snow-covered road below. We pulled back onto the road before the weather got too difficult to drive in. Main Street in North Oak was almost vacant. The shops and businesses left their lights on for Christmas. The drive home was calm. The Jerry Show kept us laughing pretty much the whole way home. His theories can get a little out of hand the later it gets, and I have no doubt Jerry is on his 6th cup of eggnog. We turned most of the lights on when we got home. It felt more comfortable to keep the ones downstairs on for the night. We got changed into our t-shirts and boxers and went back downstairs. We got under the thick blanket and watched a few Christmas movies while the fire kept the house warm. "Are you scared, Forrest?" Hasten said while looking over at me. "I don't think I am right now, at least not as much as I used to be," I replied. "Are you scared?" I asked. "If you are not scared, then I don't think I am, my love," she said after letting out a huge breath. "If this biblical shit that Blanca is saying is real, then we are fucked, you know that, right?" I said as we both began laughing briefly. "Yeah, we would be fucked, but I am with you. When I am with you, not even the below scares me," she said with a smile while running her fingers through my hair. A few moments went by when we began to hear tapping come from the mirror behind the couch by the door. It was eerie but didn't go on for much longer. Grim got up from our feet and walked over to the same mirror. He sat in front of it until it was time to go upstairs. Hasten is painting while I write. The snow has calmed down for now and the wind has become calm. The last few nights have been a lot for the two of us. I am glad that tonight we are able to relax a little bit. After we cleaned up, we put the news on in the background. We are now going to go to bed. Good night.